So a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today, our program bringing you all the latest news and events happening around the African continent. My name is Angie Meher and I'll be joining you, and as usual we begin straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines and moving to starting with the local scene where Egypt, the host of the next United Nations Summit on Climate Change, said it will push countries to make good on their pledges to sharply reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The Foreign Ministry said it will also facilitate non-adversarial talks on compensation to developing countries for global warming impacts, as well as allow climate activists to participate. Let's take a look.
The next UN Summit on Climate Change will push countries to make good on their pledges to sharply reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The statement was made by the incoming president of COP27, Sameh Shoukry. In an interview on Monday, Sameh Shoukry, who is also the president-designate of the next annual conference of the parties to be held in November in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh, called the overall goal implementation. Shoukry said the last summit held last year in Glasgow in Scotland finalized many commitments made during the Paris Agreement in 2015, which aimed to reduce emissions and limit global warming to 1.5 Celsius since pre-industrial times. Shoukry, who was attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, said the commitments and the pledges now have to be implemented in all sectors of the climate change agenda, whether it is in adaptation, mitigation or finance, loss and damage. In recent years, many developing nations and activists have increased long-standing calls to establish a fund to compensate poor countries for the devastation brought about by climate change, disproportionately caused by rich countries because of past emissions. The call was rejected during last year's summit. Many supporters of the idea, often called loss and damage, hope to make progress on it in November. Their arguments could get a boost by the symbolic significance of this conference being held in Egypt, a developing nation in North Africa. Shoukry said protests would be allowed during the conference. Shoukry said during meetings in Denmark earlier this month around climate pledges, he invited protesters who were outside to speak with him. He called the meeting productive and said that Egypt's climate goals lined up with those of many protesters.
We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this afternoon, Professor Dr. Ibrahim Hassan, Professor of Air Pollution, as well as Air Quality Consultant and the Vice President of the National Committee for Scientific Problems at the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology. It's a very good afternoon to you, Professor Ibrahim.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this afternoon.
A pleasure.
Right. Doctor, let me start by asking you, how do you weigh on the current global drive, to address the issue of climate change?
Right. Climate change is an international crisis, actually, and it's devastating. It affects everything, well-being, everything, even wealth and health of the people. And there are many ways to tackle climate crisis easily. So we have to go through these steps to tackle this crisis. The first of all is increasing awareness. We have to make lots and lots of workshops, seminars, and lectures to increase the awareness of people. We have to encourage our family, our friends, our co-workers to reduce their carbon pollution.
Indeed, indeed. Doctor, let's talk a bit about some of the pledges. Now, Egypt has said that it will encourage nations to fulfill their pledges to address climate change. How do you see these pledges? How important are they and the need to address them, especially during times of turmoil? For example, we've seen the coronavirus pandemic, the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, and now with all the disasters that are happening as a result as well of climate change. How important are these pledges, and why do nations who have made these pledges need to fulfill them, in your opinion, sir?
Indeed, it's very important. As you said, that there are some problems nowadays, like COVID-19 and the lockdown, which happened 2 years ago, and all of us were suffering. And now Ukrainian-Russian war. So this is a big problem, actually. So I think our country is doing well in this issue. They are doing seminars, and they are offering some projects for scientists all over the country not only from Egypt, but also in collaboration with well-known professors outside to tackle this problem. Academy of Science and Technology is proposing lots and lots of projects to deal with this problem, to reduce air pollution, to mitigate climate change, to adapt for climate change, because we have to adapt ourselves for climate change.
Yes.
It is a habit now, it's true. So we have to mitigate it and adapt it to it.
Absolutely. Now, Cairo has called the overall goal of the upcoming COP27 as implementation. How important, Doctor, do you see the issue of implementation?
Right. It is very important, actually, because it is a very important event. And once Egypt is honored to have this event and to celebrate this conference, this is a big issue. We have all of us to be working together to make it successful. It is very important to have such events in Egypt, which means that Egypt is now on the map of climate change problems. It's one of the leaders in the region, not only just a small country. Egypt is one of the leading countries everywhere. Mm-hmm. So this conference is indeed saying that Egypt is one of the best countries to do some challenges and to do some work in climate change.
Absolutely. Cairo has also said that, commitments have to be implemented in all sectors of climate change, whether it's adaptation or mitigation or even finance, as well as loss and damage. How do you see this call by Egypt, especially as it will be hosting the COP27, and how do you expect the response of the participants to this call, Doctor?
I'm actually looking forward to have this event in Egypt in November. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that it will be successful. It will be one of the most important events ever. There were 26 events before, but I think this one is it's one of the most important ones because it's coming during different crises such as Ukrainian-Russian crisis, COVID-19, and the recovery of COVID-19. So it's very important to have to implement everything to make it successful.
Indeed. Now, in recent years, Doctor, many developing nations and activists have really increased the long-standing calls for a kind of compensation fund for the poorer or less developed nations that are unfortunately suffering the most from the devastation wrought about by climate change, which really got off to starting because of the developed nations. How do you see this call? Even though this call has previously been, rejected or changed, what are your expectations with regards to this call, and how feasible is it, especially since the poorer or developing countries are the ones that are bearing the most impact of climate change from the developed nations?
Absolutely, you are absolutely true. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that most of the developing countries are suffering from climate change, drought, flooding, hot temperature, cold temperature, and so on. And this affects the agricultural products and the agricultural production of these countries, which makes them more poorer and more devastating. So I think this conference is going to tackle this problem in these countries. And I'm sure that people who will be participating, they will make sure that the problem is tackled very well. And we hope that we can get solutions which solve the problem and help people to mitigate the crisis of climate change, especially those in developing countries and in peasant farms.
Indeed. How about the fact that, Dr. Egypt is hosting the COP27 conference this time around, and a really great opportunity for Egypt as, a representative and a voice for the African continent and other African nations, making this call for, more pledges and more impacting decisions during the conference to really assist other African nations as well in their fight against climate change and the repercussions of climate change in their countries.
Right. This conference is going to be successful because all organizations, all domains in Egypt are doing their best to make it successful. And there are some kinds of cooperation between all developmental organizations, United Nations Developmental Program, WEAA, universities, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Environment. All these bodies are going to participate positively in this conference, and there are many goals to make this conference very successful.
Yes, indeed. In March this year, Egypt and Norway signed an agreement for several projects around green hydrogen, as well as building green infrastructure projects in African countries. Why is green hydrogen becoming, the new talk when it comes to climate change and receiving such weight lately?
Right. Let me tell you that we had a very nice workshop last week in Academy of Scientific Research and Technology about climate change, air pollution, and using satellites to tackle climate change crisis. We talked about this issue, especially about this project between Egypt, Norway, Egypt, Finland, and even Egypt, UK. The problem is we have to use green economy. We have to use green technology to tackle this problem. People may think that green means production of or cultivation of green plants. This is true, but not everything. We have to use what we are sure that there is no waste, zero waste. If you can let me know, let me to talk about this zero waste. This we are talking about. So we have to go for the green technology to reduce carbon dioxide emission. So green hydrogen, and using hydrogen is the clean energy which produces no waste at all. So we have to move to this area, as well as sustainable, as well as renewable sources of energy.
Yes, Doctor, this is for industry. Am I correct in saying this is for industry, not yet for households?
Yes, it is for industry right now.
And how, like renewable resources of energy, like the sun, like wind, etc., is now becoming more, less commercial and more for household use. How is the future of this kind of technology with green hydrogen for household use in order to really limit the impact of greenhouse gas emissions?
Very promising. Personally, I'm using sun cells to save energy in my house. I'm using clean energy, and I think many people are using these solar cells to reduce consumption of energy and to reduce waste. And using green hydrogen is a very promising tool, and I'm sure in the very near future everyone will be using this technology in cars, in houses, in everywhere.
Indeed. All, of course, to save the environment and limit the destruction of the climate. I'd like to thank you very, very much. Our guest, Professor Dr. Ibrahim Hassan, Professor of Air Pollution, Air Quality Consultant, and Vice President of the National Committee for Scientific Problems. Thank you very, very much, Doctor, for your time and your insight and for joining us on today's edition of Africa Today. And we continue with our episode and still more news, where Cairo said Egypt will host the Interpol workshop on addressing emerging terror in the Middle East and Africa. The workshop is dubbed Confronting Emerging Terrorist Organizations and Phenomena in the Middle East and Africa. We have more details in this report.
The Ministry of Interior is set to host on Monday an Interpol workshop titled Confronting Emerging Terrorist Organizations and Phenomena in the Middle East and Africa. The workshop will run until Wednesday at the Police Academy with the participation of senior security officials from 27 countries. A statement by the ministry said the three-day event reflects Egypt's pivotal role in the field of combating terrorism on the international and regional arenas, and its keenness to maintain peace and security as a main pillar for stability and economic development. The countries participating include Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Somalia, Djibouti, Nigeria, Cameroon, Benin, the Ivory Coast, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Senegal, Germany, Belgium and the US. Additionally, experts from 6 international and regional organizations will take part in the event, including Interpol, the EU, UN Office on Drugs and Crime, UN Counterterrorism Office and secretaries of G5 Sahel countries. The workshop will discuss the latest developments pertaining to terrorist activities in the regional and international arenas, in addition to the terrorist threats, with a focus on emerging terrorist phenomena and the best means for confronting them.
For our final news item for this edition of Africa Today, Africa's COVID-19 cases have passed the 11.59 million mark. South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia and Libya are reportedly among the countries with the most cases currently on the African continent. We have more details in the story.
Confirmed COVID-19 cases in Africa reached 11,596,707 as of Sunday evening. The data was provided by Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Africa (CDC). The specialized healthcare agency of the African Union (AU) said the death toll across the continent stands at 252,892 and that 10,918,957 patients have recovered from the disease. The Africa CDC said South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia and Libya are among the countries with the most cases on the continent. It said South Africa has recorded the most COVID-19 cases in Africa with 3,921,633 cases, followed by the North African country Morocco with 1,166,530 cases as of Sunday evening. In terms of the caseload, Southern Africa is the most affected region, followed by the northern and the eastern parts of the continent, while Central Africa is the least affected region, according to the Africa CDC.
And that wraps up today's edition of Africa Today, ladies and gentlemen. You were in the company of myself, Angie Meher. Many thanks for watching.